Karen stood in the middle of the street like she owned the whole neighborhood. She had her HOA badge on her shirt and her phone in her hand. She had hacked the HOA emergency Wi-Fi system and was ready to use it. She pointed at my pregnant wife and yelled, "Your wife keeps breaking rules. Today she will learn to listen." My wife stood near our mailbox, holding her belly. She was scared, but trying to stay strong. "I didn't do anything," she whispered softly. Karen pressed the HOA emergency button. Sirens started ringing. Lights started flashing in houses. People came outside, confused and scared. Then Karen pulled out a gun. The bullet hit my wife. My wife jumped back, shaking, holding her stomach, tears in her eyes. Karen smiled like she had won. But she did not know one thing: the woman she tried to scare is the wife of the police chief. Before you hear how it all happened, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more real HOA stories that show what happens when power goes too far. Karen stood in the street like she owned every house, every mailbox, every breath in the neighborhood. Her chin lifted high, HOA badge shiny on her chest, phone tight in her hand like it was a weapon. She had power, or at least she believed she did. She had control, or at least she thought she did. The evening sun hit her face, making her eyes look sharp and angry, full of jealousy and pride instead of kindness. My pregnant wife stood at the mailbox, just checking letters, holding her belly gently with one hand, the way expecting mothers always do. She was calm a few seconds earlier, humming a soft tune, thinking about baby clothes and doctor visits, not expecting danger or craziness in a peaceful suburb. But then Karen appeared, storming down the sidewalk like thunder in a quiet sky. "You think rules don't apply to you?" Karen yelled, voice loud enough to shake birds from trees. "You break HOA rules again and again. Today you learn a lesson." Her voice wasn't normal anger. It was ugly, sharp, almost proud. She wanted attention. She wanted fear. She wanted to show she had power over us. My wife took a small step back. She held her belly a little tighter, like she wanted to protect the baby inside. "I didn't break any rules," she whispered. Her voice was soft but brave. She wasn't fighting. She wasn't angry. She was just confused and scared. This was supposed to be a normal day, not a nightmare. Karen lifted her phone like she was pressing a magic button to control everyone. She pressed the HOA Wi-Fi emergency alert. Suddenly, loud sirens began ringing across the neighborhood. House alarm lights flashed in windows. Dogs barked. People opened doors and looked around, confused. A peaceful street turned into chaos in seconds, all because one woman wanted to feel big by making others small. Neighbors came outside with confused faces, whispering and pointing. Some held phones. Some held their kids' hands tightly. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. No one expected it to be about a quiet, pregnant woman just checking the mail. Karen's voice grew louder. "This neighborhood has rules. And when people break them, consequences happen. I don't care if she's pregnant. Rules are rules." She said it like she was proud of hurting someone who couldn't defend herself. Her anger wasn't about rules. It was about control. My wife shook, taking a slow breath, tears forming in her eyes but not falling yet. "Please don't do this," she said softly. "I just want peace. I didn't do anything wrong." She wasn't begging. She was pleading for sanity, for understanding, for basic decency. But Karen didn't listen. Some people don't want truth. They want power. She reached into her bag and pulled out a gun. Gasps echoed across the street. A mother grabbed her child and pulled them behind her. A man stepped back and whispered, "Call the police." Phones lifted. Fear filled the air like smoke from a fire no one started but everyone felt. Karen raised the gun and with a sharp, angry motion she fired at the ground near my wife's feet. The sound exploded like lightning. Dirt jumped up. A loud ring filled the air. Birds flew away in panic. My wife jumped back, hand gripping her belly, like her baby was her shield and her heart at the same time. Tears finally spilled from her eyes as her breath shook and her shoulders trembled. Karen smiled. A slow, cold smile. The type of smile someone wears when they believe they just won, when they think they are untouchable, when they think fear makes them powerful. Next time she hissed, "I won't miss." She didn't care about innocence or safety. She cared about control. She didn't know the woman she tried to scare wasn't just someone's wife. She didn't know I was already running home the moment I heard the alarms and panic in my radio. She didn't know she was messing with the wrong family. Because the woman she pointed a gun at, the pregnant woman she tried to frighten, is married to the police chief. To me, and I wasn't coming with anger, with the power she pretended she owned. I moved faster with each step, heart burning, not with rage, but with duty and love. And Karen was about to learn the difference between fake power and real power. Not tomorrow. The alarms kept echoing through the neighborhood, bouncing off every house like early warning sirens in a quiet town suddenly thrown into chaos. Lights flashed from windows, and doors opened slowly, one by one, as people tried to understand what nightmare had arrived on a peaceful street. My wife stood frozen near the mailbox, one hand pressed on her belly, the other covering her mouth as she tried to steady her breath. Her body trembled, not only from the shock of the gunshot, but from fear for the tiny life she carried. Every mother knows fear, but this was not normal fear. This was danger where safety should have lived. She whispered something to herself, maybe to the baby, maybe to stay strong, maybe both. Neighbors crowded around slowly but carefully, unsure how close they could get without making Karen snap again. No one wanted to trigger another burst of madness. Whispers spread through the air like dust in sunlight. Short, sharp, scared whispers. Is she crazy? She shot at a pregnant woman? Call the police. What is wrong with her? Phones lifted, hands shaking, trying to record everything, because truth needed witnesses. Karen did not look scared. She looked powerful. Her back straight, her eyes hard, jaw tight with ego. She held that gun not to protect herself, but as if it was a trophy that made her queen. You all ignored me, she shouted at the neighborhood like she was giving a speech. You think rules don't matter? You think you can break HOA laws and live like nothing is wrong? Her voice cracked, but not from fear, from rage and pride mixing into something dangerous. My wife finally managed to speak, voice shaking. Please stop. I didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't arguing, she wasn't fighting. She just wanted peace. Peace for her baby. Peace for herself. Peace for the quiet street she chose to raise a family in. But her voice only made Karen angrier. You park wrong. You leave trash bins out. You don't trim your bushes the right way. You act like the rules are a joke, Karen growled. Her voice rose with each accusation, even though everyone knew none of those things were true or important. It wasn't about rules, it was about control, and she was losing it fast. Nearby, a father hugged his little girl tight. A teenager stepped backward, gripping his skateboard, unsure whether to run or stay. An old woman whispered a prayer, holding her rosary tight in her hands. Everyone felt helpless watching a bully hold a gun. A bully who wanted everyone to believe she had power because she had a title. Then there was a sound behind the houses, fast footsteps hitting pavement and gravel, breathing hard but controlled. A voice came through the police radio, crackling in someone's pocket. Chief, emergency at your house. But I did not need that call. I was already sprinting. Each step burned with urgency, with fire, with purpose. I knew the alarms were fake. I knew someone had hacked the system. But I did not expect this. Not my wife, not my child, not our street. Not like this. My chest tightened as fear turned into something else. Not panic, not anger, duty. My wife turned her head slightly at the sound of my footsteps. Her eyes widened with relief, tears falling faster. She whispered, "He's coming," like it was a prayer answered, hope arriving in running shoes and a badge beneath a shirt. Karen turned too, hearing movement. Her eyebrows tightened. "Who's there?" she called, her tone sharp, unsure for the first time. She looked around, pointing the gun downward but still holding it firm, as if expecting someone to challenge her now that the world was watching. The neighbors' whispers changed tone, from fear to expectation. "The chief is coming," someone whispered. "He's almost here." The neighborhood did not move, did not breathe, waiting for one thing, the moment real authority arrived to face fake power. My footsteps grew louder as I got closer. The street came into view, and so did my wife. Pale face, shaking body, hands around her belly like a shield of love and fear. The sight hit me harder than any bullet could. Protecting my city was my job. Protecting my family was my life. No badge gives that duty. It comes from heart, from promise, from love. Karen's confidence wavered as she saw neighbors watching me approach with wide eyes full of trust. She could feel the power shift. Her fingers twitched. Her jaw clenched. She tried to stand taller but could not lift her ego high enough to block truth anymore. "You all think he can help?" she snapped at the crowd. "I am HOA president. I control this neighborhood. I decide who follows rules. I decide who stays." But even her voice shook now, just a little. She could feel her control slipping like sand in a fist. The tighter she grasped, the faster it fell away. My wife lifted her hand toward me, tears falling freely. "Please, just come here," she whispered softly. Her voice was small but strong enough to break hearts across the street. I stepped into full view, chest rising, eyes locked on the gun Karen still held. My voice carried calm power, the kind that does not yell because it doesn't need to. Every step I took told the truth louder than shouting ever could. I didn't need to say who I was yet. I didn't need to scream. My presence was enough. Every neighbor felt safer the moment I appeared. Every child hiding behind a parent peeked out. Every adult let their shoulders drop just a little. I did not just walk into my street. I walked into a battle already won by truth. Karen's lips parted as she recognized my face. Not from meetings, not from gossip, from newspapers, from press conferences, from moments where law mattered more than ego. Her eyes widened. Her grip on the gun loosened ever so slightly. This was no longer a woman yelling at civilians. This was a bully facing authority, a pretender facing reality, a storm facing a wall, and she finally understood. She wasn't the most powerful person on this street anymore. I stepped fully into the street, the setting sun behind me stretching a long shadow across the pavement. Every breath in the neighborhood felt paused, like even the wind was waiting to see what would happen next. My wife's eyes were red and wet, full of shock, but also full of trust the moment she saw me. She didn't say my name, she didn't cry out. She just breathed like she had finally found air again. Karen stared at me, eyebrows pulled tight, gun still in her hand but confidence slipping like sand through a broken glass. She opened her mouth to speak, but only one confused sound came out. She had shouted so loud moments ago, but now her words were stuck somewhere between anger and fear. She didn't know which one would save her, so she couldn't choose either. I kept walking toward her slowly, shoulders steady, eyes locked on her trembling hand. I didn't rush, didn't shout. This wasn't chaos for me. This was control. Real control. Not the kind printed on cheap badges or shouted through HOA meetings, but the kind built from duty and law, and the promise to protect. Karen forced her voice out finally, louder than she felt. "Stop right there. Don't come closer. I am the HOA president. You need to listen to me." Her voice cracked at the end, her own ears hearing the weakness she tried to hide. "You think you can order me around?" she said again, but this time her voice wasn't strong. It wobbled like she didn't believe her own power anymore. I didn't answer her right away. I let silence do its job. Silence has weight, and it pressed down on Karen harder than any word could. Her hand shook, the gun dipping slightly, not because she wanted to lower it, but because fear had finally entered her bones. My wife whispered softly behind me, voice like a fragile string, "Please, just put it down." Even in fear, she begged for peace, not punishment, not revenge, just safety. Karen didn't even look at her. She looked at me, searching my face for something, weakness, hesitation, anything she could use, but all she found was calm. Calm is scarier to bullies than shouting. Shouting they understand, calm they cannot fight. I reached to my belt and lifted my badge slowly. No drama, no show, just truth, real authority spoken without words. I held it just long enough for her eyes to recognize it, then lowered it again. Her entire body jolted like someone pulled electricity through her spine. You're, she stuttered, voice tiny. "Yes," I replied, steady like steel. "And you just threatened a pregnant woman." A gasp spread through the crowd like wind through trees. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Someone else murmured, "She's done." A little boy squeezed his mother's hand and asked, "Mom, is the baby okay?" The mother pulled him closer, shushing gently, eyes still wide on the scene. Karen shook her head quickly, like she could rewind reality if she moved fast enough. I didn't know," she stammered, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. If I knew she was your wife, I wouldn't. That's not the point, I interrupted, my voice still calm. Calm is how law speaks when the truth is already decided. You shouldn't threaten anyone. She swallowed hard, her throat tight, chest rising and falling too fast. She looked around, searching for support from the very neighbors she used to bully. None stepped forward. None defended her. People who once nodded to her in meetings now avoided her eyes like she carried fire in her hands. A man from across the street spoke quietly. "You went too far, Karen." His voice had no anger, only disappointment. Another woman held her baby close and whispered, "How could you do that to a mother?" A teenager who watched everything shook his head, eyes wide in disbelief. They weren't attacking her. They were watching her fall under her own actions. Karen backed up a step, as if distance could change anything. I was enforcing rules," she whispered, the excuse sounding weak even to herself. "No," I replied. "You were abusing power." Her knees bent slightly, like her legs couldn't hold the weight of truth anymore. The gun lowered another inch. Not because of bravery, because fear was finally doing what reason could not. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she whispered desperately. "It was just a warning. She disrespected my authority." "You don't have authority," I said softly. "You only had power that people allowed you to have. And today, you lost it." Tears filled her eyes, mixing anger and panic. "You can't arrest me," she said hoarsely. "I'm OA president. Being HOA president doesn't let you scare people," a neighbor said firmly. "It doesn't give you a gun." Another voice added, "It definitely doesn't let you threaten a baby." Karen opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Her chest moved up and down quickly, breath shaking. The crowd wasn't angry anymore. They were disappointed, tired, relieved someone stood up. Sometimes the worst punishment is realizing no one sees you as powerful anymore. My wife reached for my hand, and I held hers gently. Her breathing steadied as she leaned into me, strength returning because she no longer had to stand alone. The baby inside her kicked softly, like even life inside her felt the moment shift. The street was silent, except for the beat of justice finally landing softly, peacefully, firmly. Karen's gun hung loosely now, pointed at the ground, not from choice, but because her hand could not hold it strong anymore. All her shouting, all her control, all her pride, gone the moment truth arrived, and I hadn't even raised my voice once. Karen's hand shook so much the gun nearly slipped from her fingers. Her voice, once loud like a horn, now cracked like a broken window in wind. She looked around, searching every face in the crowd, hoping someone, anyone, would step forward and defend her. But no one moved. The same people she controlled with warning letters and fake smiles now stared at her like a stranger. Some looked disappointed, some angry, some afraid they ever listened to her. The street, once her stage, now felt like a courtroom she never prepared for. My wife kept holding my arm, her other hand resting gently on her belly, breathing slowly, trying to calm herself and the tiny life inside her. I squeezed her hand softly, giving strength back where fear had lived only minutes ago. Her shoulders relaxed just enough to show she trusted the moment, trusted me, trusted the truth coming to life in front of her. Karen's lips trembled as she tried to lift her chin, trying to rebuild her power with posture, but no height could save her now. She broke HOA rules. She forced out, voice thin and weak. She parked wrong. She left trash bins out. She planted unapproved flowers. Her mailbox height is wrong. She disrespected the HOA. A man near the sidewalk shook his head. That's not true. She follows every rule. A woman holding a toddler spoke softly but clearly. Even if she didn't, she's pregnant. You don't treat people like that. Another neighbor, voice shaking with anger, stepped forward. You yell at everyone. You sent me 5 warnings for my grass when you had weeds in your yard the whole time. Someone else muttered, You bullied half this street. Each voice broke another piece of the false kingdom Karen built. The invisible crown she placed on her own head slipped, shattered by real voices, real truth, real community. Authority isn't power, respect is. And she had lost all of it. Karen tried again, desperation rising. I'm the HOA president. I enforce rules. I protect this neighborhood. You scare this neighborhood, someone replied sharply. There's a difference. She turned back to me, eyes wide, lips tight, trying one last defense. You can't do anything to me. I'm the leader here. You don't run anything anymore, I said quietly. Calm, steady, final. Those words didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They simply ended her reign. Power ends not with noise, but with truth spoken by someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to be heard. Karen's breaths turned quick and panicked. She stepped backward like the weight of her choices pushed her feet without permission. Her voice grew small. You can't arrest me. You can't. I don't need to arrest you, I replied softly. Your actions already did. Her shoulders dropped, the gun in her hand lowered fully, not by control but surrender. Her ego, once sharp as claws, now looked like soft paper melting in rain. Bullying works until someone stands in the way who cannot be pushed. My wife leaned her head against my shoulder, finally letting exhaustion settle in. Fear leaves slowly, like water draining from a cup with tiny cracks. She breathed deep, and her hand rubbed her belly again. Inside her, our baby rested safely, protected not only by us, but now by a whole street that had finally seen what needed seeing. Neighbors looked at each other, not in confusion anymore, but in understanding. People who ignored the signs before now realized what they allowed. Sometimes, communities don't change because danger appears. They change because someone refuses to look away when danger shows its face. An older man with silver hair stepped forward, cane tapping ground softly. His voice trembled with age, but held more strength than Karen's ever did. You don't get to call fear leadership, he said gently. You don't get to call control protection. Power isn't shouting. Power is responsibility. Karen looked at him with hollow eyes. She knew those words cut deeper than any accusation. She had power, but she never had respect. And now she had neither. My wife whispered softly, voice fragile but firm. I just wanted to check our mail. Such a simple statement, yet it held everything. She didn't start anything. She didn't fight anyone. She was just living, and someone tried to take safety away from her. A mother nearby nodded slowly. No one deserves that, she said, her tone carrying the strength of every parent who ever protected a child. More heads nodded, a silent agreement spreading like calm water over a shaken lake. Karen suddenly looked small, not because she shrank, but because truth shrunk the lie she wore like armor. She blinked rapidly, eyes filling with tears she didn't want to show. Maybe guilt, maybe fear, maybe both. But tears don't erase actions. You all turned against me, she whispered. It wasn't anger anymore, it was disbelief. People who build walls out of pride forget that those walls trap them alone. No, someone answered softly. You put yourself against everyone. Karen swallowed hard, her arm falling limp, gun hanging useless by her side. The HOA badge on her chest no longer shined. It looked like a child's toy pinned on a costume, pretend authority pretending to matter. She once demanded respect, rules, obedience. Now she only met eyes full of disappointment. I stepped a little closer, slowly, showing control without threat. You made choices, I said, and choices have consequences. Karen trembled. Her power, once so loud and sharp, had faded into silence. Not broken by force, broken by truth. And as she looked around at the faces watching her with sadness, fear, and relief, she finally understood something she never learned in any HOA rulebook. Real leadership protects. Real authority doesn't need fear. And real power stands quietly, until it needs to stand tall. Sirens echoed down the street, louder and clearer, growing closer every second. This time, they were not alarms hacked through a Wi-Fi system. This time they were real, powerful, unmistakable, the sound of the law arriving. Red and blue lights flashed across the houses, painting walls, trees, and sidewalks like a warning from the sky itself. The neighbors' whispers stopped. Even children stopped crying for a moment. Everyone felt something shift, like justice was walking down the road. 2 police cars stopped at the curb, tires crunching on the pavement. The doors opened slowly and calmly, not rushed, not aggressive. Officers stepped out with steady movements, eyes scanning the scene. They didn't need to ask many questions. They saw my wife's shaking body, the gun hanging in Karen's weak hand, the fear in the faces around us. One officer recognized me immediately, eyes widening before turning serious again, respectful in silence. He didn't salute, didn't call out. This wasn't military. And right now, I wasn't the boss. I was a husband standing between fear and family. The officer nodded once, the kind of nod that says 1,000 words without speaking. Karen took one step back as they approached, but it was not bravery. It was panic. Her voice shook, desperate and broken. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. She ignored HOA rules. I just wanted her to listen. My wife held my arm tighter, her face pale, eyes shiny with tears not yet dry. I could feel the pulse in her hand, beating fast, fear leaving but still living under her skin. She breathed slowly, calming herself so the baby inside wouldn't feel the storm. One officer, calm and firm, spoke clearly. "Ma'am, please drop the weapon." Karen blinked rapidly. Her fingers loosened as if her strength finally gave up pretending. The gun slipped from her hand and hit the ground with a dull metallic thud. That sound echoed deeper than the gunshot did. Because this time it wasn't fear speaking, it was surrender. She raised her hands automatically, slowly, like she finally understood her world wasn't made of rules she wrote. Another officer stepped forward and gently, but firmly, took her wrists and placed handcuffs on them. The click of the cuffs sounded final, like a door closing forever behind her. Karen's eyes filled with tears, angry and hopeless all at once. "You ruined my life," she whispered, voice shaking like glass ready to break. I looked at her, calm, not angry, not shouting, not cruel. "No," I said softly. "You ruined your own life. I only stopped you before you ruined someone else's." She swallowed hard. Her face tightened, then fell apart in defeat. All the pride she wore like armor crumbled. People who live off power always look the smallest when power leaves them. A woman from the crowd murmured, "She almost hurt a baby." Another whispered, "She could have killed someone." The weight of those words didn't shout. They pressed quietly like heavy truth. Karen turned her head away, unable to face what she had become. As the officers guided her toward the car, cameras recorded her. Not because people were cruel, but because truth deserved proof. Neighbors who once feared her now watched with relief. A few clapped quietly, not celebrating her fall, but celebrating the end of her power over them. One man wiped tears from his eyes, not from sadness but release. My wife leaned against me, breathing slowly. I placed my hand on her back, rubbing small circles, grounding her, telling her with touch that she was safe, she was loved, she was protected. Her hand rested on her belly again, fingers soft and protective, comforting our baby even before its first breath. The officer spoke respectfully to me, not loudly but with understanding. "We'll transport her, Chief." "You okay?" one asked gently. I nodded once. "My wife and baby are safe. That's all that matters," my wife whispered, voice still trembling. "Thank you." She wasn't thanking me for showing authority. She was thanking me for showing up, for standing between her and fear, for being there when danger tried to call itself control. As the police car door closed on Karen, her face pressed against the window, eyes hollow. She wasn't the powerful HOA leader anymore. She was a woman who thought rules made her strong, but learned too late that kindness makes a community, not fear. The engine started. The patrol car pulled away slowly. The flashing lights faded into the distance, leaving quiet behind. The chaos that filled the air earlier drifted away like smoke after fire disappears. The street returned to stillness, but not to silence. Silence isn't always calm. This was different. This was peace. A neighbor approached gently with a bottle of water for my wife. Another offered a chair. Someone brought a blanket, just in case she felt cold. They didn't do these things because I was police chief. They did them because they finally remembered what community really means. My wife sat slowly, one hand still resting on her belly. She finally exhaled, a long, shaky breath that turned into relief. A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time it wasn't fear. It was safety finding her again. I knelt beside her, one hand holding hers, the other brushing hair from her face. "You're safe." "He's okay," I whispered, touching her stomach gently. She nodded, smiling faintly, closing her eyes as if feeling calm wash through her. The sun dipped lower, red, warm, quiet, as if the sky itself wanted to calm everything too. Neighbors whispered softer now, kids peeking out again, slowly returning to play, life returning step by tiny step. The storm was gone. Not because it passed, because we stood against it. The police cars disappeared down the street, and for a long moment, nobody moved. It felt like the air itself was tired, like it had carried too much fear and finally needed to rest. Slowly, very slowly, the world around us began to breathe again. The wind touched the trees gently, as if checking if it was safe to move. Children whispered to their parents. Someone exhaled loudly in relief. Peace didn't fall all at once. It returned softly, step by step, like a scared animal coming out of hiding. I kept my arm around my wife. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her body shaking less than before, but still holding the memory of fear. Her hand rested on her belly like she always did when she needed comfort, like she was holding both herself and our baby safe with that one simple touch. I slid my hand gently over hers, letting her feel the quiet strength in my fingers. She whispered, "I thought something horrible would happen." Her voice was thin, tired, full of leftover tears. I kissed the side of her head slowly. "Nothing will happen to you," I whispered back. "Not while I'm here. Not ever." I didn't say those words loud. They didn't need volume. They just needed truth. She breathed out, long and shaky, like she finally let go of something heavy she carried in her lungs. Neighbors began moving closer again, not crowding, not watching like before, but offering presence. Soft voices, soft steps, gentle faces. An older woman walked up with a blanket and placed it around my wife's shoulders, with kindness that didn't need permission. "You're safe now, dear," she said in a grandmotherly whisper. My wife nodded, tears in her eyes again, but this time they came from comfort, not fear. One man held a bottle of water out to me. "You handled that calmly," he said quietly. "Thank you." I accepted the bottle, not because I needed water, but because accepting kindness from others was part of healing too. Then he added, almost ashamed, "We should have stood up sooner. We all saw how she treated people. I'm sorry." He wasn't apologizing only for himself. He was apologizing for all the neighbors who saw small cruelty and stayed quiet, thinking it didn't matter, until it did. I nodded. "What matters is that today everyone saw the truth," I said softly. "And from today forward, we stand together." He nodded slowly, understanding the promise in those words. A child stepped forward, a small girl holding a half-melted popsicle, eyes wide and innocent. She didn't understand power, or HOA rules, or adult conflict. She only knew fear and safety. She looked up at my wife and whispered timidly, "Are you okay?" My wife smiled weakly and nodded. The little girl smiled back shyly and held out her popsicle like she was giving the most precious thing she owned. My wife laughed softly, wiping tears and gently refusing, but thanking her. That tiny moment felt like sunshine. Another neighbor said, "You know, we were always scared of Karen. She acted like she was bigger than all of us." A father holding his toddler replied, "Yeah, she was loud, but you didn't need to yell." He looked at me with respect in his eyes. "Real strength doesn't shout, does it?" I shook my head. "No. Real strength protects quietly." My wife's breathing finally slowed to normal. She touched her belly and whispered. The baby was scared too. Her voice trembled, but she smiled as she said it, like she was speaking to our child through her heartbeat. I placed my hand over hers gently. "Our baby also felt love," I whispered, "and safety, and a mother who stood strong." I said those words not just to comfort her, but because they were true. Fear doesn't erase strength. Courage and fear can live in the same heart at the same time. My wife didn't break. She protected. She held our child safe, even shaking, and that made her strong in a way no award or badge ever could. As evening turned to dusk, the light softened across the street. The swing swayed gently in the breeze. A dog barked far away. Someone's sprinkler turned on with a soft clicking sound. Normal life returned, simple, ordinary, safe, beautiful in its normalcy. I carried a chair to the front yard and sat beside my wife. She rested back, eyes half closed, hands still on her belly. I held her fingers in mine, a quiet reminder that she wasn't alone, not for 1 second, that she never would be. The baby kicked once under her palm, as if saying, "I'm okay too." She smiled tiredly. "He felt that," she said softly. He knows he's safe. I looked around the neighborhood, at the houses, the trees, the children who slowly started playing again, this time with softer voices but real laughter. Peace after storm always looks different, not loud, not bright, but gentle and deep. A young father walked over and spoke quietly. You didn't just protect your family today, he said. You protected all of us. You showed us we don't have to be scared anymore. He wasn't congratulating me. He was thanking me, as someone who finally realized he had been living under someone else's fear. Thank you, he repeated, voice full of relief. I nodded once. No pride in my heart, only peace. This wasn't a victory. This was safety earned. This was a lesson shared. This was a community waking up. And waking up matters more than winning. The stars began to appear slowly in the sky, one by one, quiet, peaceful, steady, just like the feeling in the air. And I thought about something simple but true. Power is not in a badge. Power is protecting without hesitation, even when your voice is soft. Power is standing still so others don't fall. Power is loving someone enough to face danger with calm eyes. I looked at my wife, tired but safe, strong in her quietness. I looked at our home, still standing, still ours. And I knew one thing with certainty: no one threatens my family,